Thank you for this great turnout.
Yes.
This is a speaker who does not need an introduction. Come to love him, and he's going to tell us a lot about himself.
Well, thank you, John.
More than I would ever.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for having me this morning. You can ask questions if you'd like to interrupt me, but I might be like, hold on, I'm getting to it, because I might have planned for it, but I also might not have. But there are no questions off limits, but I'll get the basics out of the way. I'm single. I don't plan to marry or have children. So those questions, there you go. Answer those. You'll learn a lot more about me as we go. So up here on the left, that picture is actually from last Christmas. I am singing, I believe, Sweet Little Jesus Boy, and Gene is actually accompanying me. That is at the small Episcopal church in Troy, Pennsylvania, where I was the soloist on the Sassance Christmas Oratorio, and then we did the second half, and that was actually my first time working with Gene professionally, and that was 2 years ago.
2 or 3 years ago.
It's been at least a year, but so.
How come there's not a picture of me, Randy?
Yeah, I know. They cut you. You have to talk to Rob.
Because I was cut out.
And then the bottom left, that is a decade ago. That's after my first year of teaching, and I am at Machu Picchu in Peru. That is my 25th birthday as well. I was at Machu Picchu on my 25th birthday. It was through EF Tours, and it was for me, it was a celebration of my surviving my first year of teaching. And as you all know, coming out of college into the real world, you feel like a millionaire because you finally got all this money. And I was used to living off of ramen and dust balls, so I was able to finance the trip to Peru with the group, and it was a really wonderful experience. So that's me. My technical titles right now are Directors of Choir at Canton Junior Senior High School in Canton, Pennsylvania. I'm the Director of Music here at Trinity Memorial Episcopal in Binghamton. So some things about me. I'm not very old. I'm 35. I'll be 36 this summer in July. I know most of you could probably be my parent. Some of you may be my grandparents. But I was born in 1988 in July in Franklin, Pennsylvania. If you take Interstate 80, so go down to Pennsylvania to Williamsport, and then go 3.5 hours east, you will get to my house eventually. You can also take 86 across southern New York and hit Interstate 79 and drop straight down. That's another way you can get to my house from here. I've done that 3 times so far. If you go west, you're going to need something bigger or more convenient than a car. Or east, you're going to need more than a car. You need a boat or a plane. So, yeah. But if you go east, you got to go across New York and Europe and Russia and circumnavigate the world. So you'll need something more than 4 wheels. I attended Franklin Area School District my entire career. And the town I technically live in is Polk, Pennsylvania, Polk. It is actually named after President James Polk. And at one point, it was the largest self-sufficient mental hospital in the world. They had over 150 acres. If you look at it now and you drive through, it actually looks like a branch campus of a university. And I'm waiting for a university to pick it up as an agricultural branch campus because it has everything they need. It needs a little tough love from the 50s, but it's so if you're interested in looking at Polk, Polk, it's quite a remarkable town and remarkable history, and it employed everyone in like a 440-mile radius because everyone worked there for the state.
How close are you to Ohio?
My parents. It's about 35 minutes, as the crow flies. If you drive, there's a little back roads, but yeah, we're pretty close. So, I attended my undergraduate at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, where I did an undergraduate degree in music education, and I was crazy, so I decided I was going to do 2 majors and 4 minors. And so I did what's technically called a dual concentration. So I had weekly organ lessons and voice lessons that were anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour long. And then I had minors in clarinet, piano, religious studies, and technically music theater, though it's unofficial. They don't offer a music theater undergraduate, but I had 27 credits in music theater, which is more than you need for a minor. And the religious studies wasn't specific to any religion. It was just religion in general. And so I learned a ton of perspective that I was not offered growing up, which I really think that degree specifically helped me become the person I am today. After I was done at IUP, I went to Kansas State University. That is not the University of Kansas for college basketball and the Jayhawks. Wrong one. It is 2 hours further west in Manhattan, Kansas. And we are the Wildcats, and they're better known for their football than anything else. Though we have had good years of basketball and baseball, and the girls volleyball team is quite amazing out there as well. And I did a master's degree in vocal performance, but I also took 3 semesters of organ lessons like anyone else would at that level. I just didn't have to take like organ literature and organ history and those kind of things because I didn't get a master's in organ. And then I also had 2 semesters under my belt of directing a show choir, and that has just confirmed that I am not supposed to direct a show choir for my life. It was the tail that wagged the dog, and at one point I was just like, I'm spending more time worrying about show choir than I am my own master's thesis and recital, because that was, again, it just had to happen. So that group no longer exists there. They killed it a couple years after I left. Wish they'd killed it before I got there, because I would have liked to have been one of like the organ TAs who taught, some basic theory courses or things like that, because I'm a nerd and I like teaching theory. So my home life, these are my parents. I'll move that for a second. That's my father. It's my mom. That's me. That is a while ago. That's the only picture I have with my dad. He doesn't take a lot of pictures. We have a great relationship. We just don't take pictures together. But my mom's name is Robin. My dad's name is Fred. I have a brother, Nathan, and his wife, Mary, and they just had a child on April 18th. So he's a month old yesterday, and his name is Andrew. So here's some pictures of me. I really like to travel, and I will try my whole life to get as many travel experiences as I can. So this picture on the left, and that's the face I make in every picture. I'm just always surprised. So that's the Vatican. That is, and I walked in and I had no idea the sheer size and mass. It's like you could land 8 757s in here and still have room for like a world soccer match. It was incredible. It is one of the largest things I've ever seen. I just was so blown away. And I did walk around and peek in all the little naves. I counted 4 organs. There's probably more, but I counted 4. And then there's this really cool stairwell that goes down somewhere, but there was velvet ropes across it. And I decided, since I was the adult on the trip, I should probably behave and set a good role example for my children, but I really wanted to go down there. So the middle picture, we are standing in front, that's my mom and I standing in front of the Italian Parliament. And then on the right-hand side is when we were in Paris at the Arc de Triomphe. And this was from 2 summers ago. My mom and I did an EF tour that traveled to Rome, Paris, and London.
So when you say EF, does that mean with your choir?
No. This was with my former school group, and we just all went, and actually my trip was postponed. It was supposed to happen the summer of 2020, but with COVID, they just moved us 2 years back, and we were able to go last summer.
It's the company that does the traveling mostly for students.
Yeah, so they have what's called EF, and that's Education First, and that is actually who I'm going to Panama City and Panama with at the end of June this year. But they also have an adult version of EF. It's just not called EF. It's called like Adventure Tours. Everything else is the exact same. It's just you don't have to have the school policies. And it doesn't technically have to be a school. Technically, my EF tours I go with are sponsored through the church that I'm a member of in Troy because I wanted to skip the school board red tape. Some more picture. I take a lot of pictures with my mom. My mom and I travel a lot together too. So on the left, that's my mother and I at the Boulevard Brewery in Kansas City. And my mom does not drink alcohol at all. So I got this like 14.5% sour to try. I thought it was awful. She picked it up and sipped it and went, well. And I was like, Mom, what are you doing? Like, you're supposed to drive. Come on. So, yes, it was hysterical though, because I had never seen my mother drink anything, and she's just throwing them back. So, and then in the middle again, my mom, and that's my cousin. I have on my father's side, I have 2 cousins, and when we were younger, we were basically siblings. We spent all of our time together. We called her the stupid baby for years because she was born. My brother got mad because he was no longer the youngest, so she became stupid baby, and until her brother came along and. On, but we have a very good relationship, and she's just a couple years younger than us. And then that's my mom and I again, and that is somewhere in Rome. So if you've been to Rome before, all I can tell you is we were looking this way at ruins, and Italian Parliament's up here on the hill. So if you know what that is, that's the ruins we were at. I can't remember which one it was. Yeah, actually, I think that's it. Look at you. See, I knew someone would know. Yes, that one. Yep, that's it. That's it. Yes. Okay. So then this is the newest addition, the 2 newest additions to my family. In the middle is my brother with his wife, Mary. And then on the left is baby Andrew. My family has the tradition of the middle name being William. So I'm a William, my dad's a William, my grandfather's a William, and my great-grandfather's a William. Well, my family knows I'm not planning to have children. So Andrew's middle name is actually William. And his name's Andrew William Frye. We only have 3 letters difference, so I just tell everyone he was named after me. And I call him Andy because it rhymes with Randy, even though I'm not supposed to. And then on the right, he actually opened his eyes for a second to look at the camera for the picture, and that worked out really well with my mother and me and him. And he's doing quite well. So my teaching in life, I primarily I have only taught secondary. I student taught elementary school and had a really great time. But I also knew immediately that I am not the teacher who is willing to crawl around on the floor and wipe snot off kids' nose. And God did not give me that particular skill set. And he also let me know that right away. When I got done with student teaching and I went, yeah, I'm not ready to do this at all. So that is one of the reasons I went to get my master's right away. I knew I was not ready for teaching. I had a wonderful, wonderful experience with my voice teacher and undergraduate. Rest in peace, Dr. Mantle. And she taught me a lot of repertoire, but not a lot of technique. I didn't understand how the vocal mechanism worked a lot. And I didn't feel like I had enough authority to stand in front of a classroom and tell them how to sing well, because I didn't really know my own voice well enough. And you could say words like thyroid. And he'd be like, that's in there. Yep. And I didn't know enough about it to really become in it. So I went to grad school right away. And then after that, I started teaching in a giant high school. I taught in Lawrence, Kansas. We graduated 450 students per class. So it served about 14,000 students district-wide. We had 2 high schools, 4 middle schools, 26 elementary schools, a college and career advanced robotics lab tech center, all kinds of stuff. I was the assistant director. There was a head director and a full-time accompanist. And in the choral program, I saw 300 students a day. It was wonderful. I learned so much in those 6 years that I was there as the assistant director. And then I also had a full-time church job, which I'll talk about my church life after I talk through my teaching life. But I taught 9th and 10th grade primarily at that point. I did all the beginning choirs and then our mixed choir. And then every once in a while I would do our advanced ensemble and our advanced treble choir, but wasn't the head director. That was his gig. He worked a long time to get there. But the nice thing about the guy I worked with, he played piano as well as I do. And so between the 3 of us, someone was at the piano, and our pianist, actually, if you're all familiar with Doc Severinsen, his soprano, Vanessa Thomas, was my accompanist at school. So I'd feel really awkward because I'm her boss, but musically, we're not even in the same realm. She's up here doing, she was the soloist of the West Virginia Symphony Orchestra 2 years ago. And she's a real B-level star where, I just teach high school choir. And so that was always the moment where it's and she's the best musician I've ever met. So we did all kinds of fun stuff. We did 4-hand piano things. Sometimes we get going on gospel music and then we just all creep up to the piano and start 6-hand stuff. It's just ridiculous. The kids would just shrug. They'd never know what we were doing. But because of those 2 people specifically, I had a really wonderful first teaching experience. In my first couple years, he just let me teach. He did all the administrative things. He did all the paperwork and the budget, and which is the part that kills the music teacher, because it's not the music part that's the hard job. It's everything else. So that was really wonderful for me. And then right when COVID hit, we had a junior high position opened, and I was at a point in my life where I was ready to try something else. I wanted to try some new administration. I wanted to try a different building and a new age group. I loved junior high when I student taught, so I was like, well, I'll try junior high. Junior high is awesome, except when you're teaching block periods during COVID on Zoom. So you got, 95-minute block with 7th and 8th graders. 4 of them would show up, and you're trying to teach choir. So we did a lot of general music and a lot of world music and things like that. So that's primarily my teaching life. And then I do a lot of private lessons. That's actually my favorite way to teach. I love the one-on-one. I like to get to know the person and also get to encourage them as young musicians and things like that, because that was a great part of my life. My piano teachers when I first started, Mrs. Krogan, was awesome and patient. She was a pastor's wife, so she had patience for days. And we used it. My brother and I, we used a lot of that. And my grandfather was a music educator. He taught band for a very, very long time. And honestly, if my grandpa had been discovered, he probably would have been a jazz musician up there with the best of them. And I don't say that because he's my grandfather. Like, truly, he is a phenomenal. And you put a saxophone or woodwind in his hand, and he could play it any style at the drop of a hat. And and my grandfather is still living. He has Parkinson's pretty severely, so he's in a caring place. But I've inherited all of his instruments, and his saxophones alone are worth like 30 grand because he bought like top of the line when they came out. And I had such a wonderful experience growing up, experiencing those things with him playing. And then my dad sings and plays, and my mom sings, and we're just a pretty musical family. My mom is a very low alto, almost tenor. And then my grandma on her side sometimes could sing. She sang tenor sometimes. Other times it was just monotone on pitch. Well, off pitch. But she really liked the Gaithers. And I'm very blessed that both of my grandparents listened to old music, but different styles. So my father's parents were big into the 1940s radio hour. That's actually what I listened to on Sirius XM all the time, is 1940s. So if you know the hit tune, My Cat Tangerine, one of my favorite songs, it's like from 1942. And then my grandma did a lot of the old Gaither home style homecoming things. So I'm very thankful that music was a part of my family's history, because had it not been, I probably would have only known 1990s Christian rock. That's it. That would have been what I knew, and like the 4 piano songs I learned. But because of that, I was introduced to a lot of different music at a very young age. So these are some of the kids and some of my teaching and things like that. On the far right, that was America Day, USA Day, Mismatch Day. So we went a little nuts. And then in the middle, those are kind of primarily they're not my children, but I call them my children. They're all siblings, and I give them piano lessons, all 4 of them lessons. And they're kind of like the kids I'll never have, which is awesome because I do a lot of things with them. Up on the top left, the youngest actually won an award at a piano recital. And then at the bottom left, this is me with some students and colleagues this year at the Pennsylvania All-State Associations Conference. And this dude with the bow tie, that is like my prize pupil. He very, very good. He's going to be a music major. He's a junior. He sings really, really well. And I'm very thankful that he is interested in music, because I wouldn't be going anywhere if he wasn't going to these things. And that's the student I took to PCDA, the conference that I went to this summer, which I'll show you here in a little bit. These are just some more pictures of my professional life. Up on the top left are 2 of my organ colleagues from college. That's Maximilian Esmus. Maximilian is a very, very well-known organist in the Philadelphia area. He actually just played a recital at Troy Presbyterian this past Friday. 2 days ago.
Which is online, you can listen to it.
Yeah, if you're interested, he is phenomenal. And if you go to Troy Presbyterian Church's Facebook page, it will be live. It's there saved. The bottom left is my best friend from high school. She and her husband are very big deals now down in New Orleans. Someday I think she's going to be like deputy mayor. But she runs she works on the boards on a huge nonprofit. Her husband is a CFO for one of the financial industries down there. And she's one of my best friends. We've been friends for like 25 years at this point. The top center picture is my first year of teaching celebration. That's all the teachers at graduation. The bottom center is just a picture of a lot of the people I sang with professionally when I was in Kansas City. I sang in a professional choir, so we're at a wedding of one of our members. And then on the far right, those are 2 teachers who are kind of my besties. Damien, the man on the right, teaches at Wyalusing High School, and Carly, right in the middle, teaches. She's now at Athens, but was at Sayre for quite a while. So that's the crew there. This is my organ professor. She would be mortified if she knows that I'm showing you this picture. Her name's Dr. Christine Kluhl, and she is the reason I'm a church organist. Hands down, she is the reason. I walked into a departmental. If you don't know what that is, it's like the end of the semester. You have 4 a semester, and everyone in the music department gets together and you watch someone play or sing or whatever. And the last one of the semester was always at the church. We didn't have an organ on campus, so we had to go off campus. And she played because she didn't have any organ students that semester. And I just remember she played this Messiaen work that was, ridiculous, all the Berg calls, and then at the end just like smacks you in the face with full organ. And I remember sitting there, and then and the organ's behind me, and I just whipped around and was like, that's what I want to do. That's it. That's what I want to do. And so I talked to her afterwards. Long story short, my first thing I ever played on the organ was the hymn Holy, 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 because she was like, well, what hymns do you know? And I was like, I know a couple. She goes, well, just play your favorite. Good luck with the pedal. I was like, never done any of this before, but I got through it, and she was very encouraging, and there's quite a bit of money in an endowment fund specifically for organ majors. And she offered some significant scholarship help to become a minor. So I declared a minor. And then after one semester of study, I decided very quickly that this was probably the most fun I'd ever had. And also I could be the star all by myself. I didn't need someone else to do it. And if I didn't like what was going on, I could just play louder, right? Just keep pulling it on. Eventually I'm going to win this battle, right? So these are all of my church appointments. Like I said, I'm really fortunate. I started in 8th grade. This guy lived down the road, Terry Miller, called my dad and said, hey, we need a pianist twice a month. Do you think Randy plays well enough to come and play like 3 hymns and like some little tinkle things? And he was like, yeah, probably twice a month. We talked to my piano teacher. So as an 8th grade student, I was playing twice a month. I got $30 a Sunday. I thought as an 8th grader, that's $1 million. That's 3 movies a week plus popcorn. Like I was set. So I was there throughout my high school career, and I eventually got to the point my last year I was playing basically every single Sunday out there. I would still attend with my parents sometimes at their home church, but I was there quite a bit. After that, I went to IUP and was hired the first year as a vocalist at Calvary Presbyterian Church. I had not started organ lessons or anything. So, and then after that, when I actually became an organ major, a very tiny evangelical Lutheran church desperately needed an organist. It was about 30 minutes from the university, and I had a vehicle, so I was able to go. And they had just put in a digital Allen. They had spent some money on it. They were very small. They didn't have money. Their last organist had unfortunately died on the bench on Christmas Eve. Like collapsed during one of the hymns.
Oh, my goodness.
To be fair, he was 94 and had been the organist there for like 70 years. And I was there like 5 years after him. They didn't have anyone for a while. But the running joke was, well, that was the way he would have wanted to go. And I think that'd be a pretty terrifying, but also awesome way to go. So, but I was there for 4 years, and they were so patient. I was not raised Lutheran. I didn't know liturgy was a new word to me. I didn't know like this Alleluia and why are people bowing and what is that smell? Like it was all brand new to me because I was raised in a very evangelical 4-chord, 4 times, 4 amens kind of church. So when I got this position, they were kind, they were patient. I remember my first Sunday, I played an Alleluia in the wrong spot. I didn't know it said to go, so I went. And then the pastor goes, not yet. I was like, then when I go to the rest, she goes, I was like, oh, okay. And then we went. But it was a really fun dichotomy between us because they knew I was really young and needed trained. They were thrilled to have a real live person sitting on their bench. So it worked out really well. And I got a pay increase from $30 a Sunday to $100 a Sunday. And as you know, a college student, that's like $1 million. So I was doing really well. And then I went to graduate school, and my vocal professor was the director of music at First Presbyterian Church in Manhattan, Kansas. They have probably don't repeat this, probably the nicest instrument I've ever played in my life. It was 1986 Dobson. It had French levers and it was beautiful. They had hand flamed all of the copper pipes, so the fire was it. And I will show you, there's a great picture of it. But I got to play that for organ juries, and then they asked me to be their substitute organist and assistant choir director for my second year of graduate school. And then from there, I went to Lawrence, Kansas, which is where the Jayhawks are, but that's where I taught high school. And I was employed there my entire time at First Presbyterian Church in Lawrence, Kansas. I got a phone call that summer right before I was hired from a man named Tracy Rezegi, who is Dan Forrest's best friend. If you know the name Dan Forrest, he's a big-time choral music composer. Big deal. Well, his best friend's Tracy. He's in Kansas City. I went to school with his daughter. I did not know that, but Tracy called me and goes, Randy Frye? And I was like, yes. He's like, you went to school with my daughter, Kara. I need a church organist. Are you in Kansas yet? And I said, I'll be there next week. He goes, great. I'll meet you at this church at this address on this day. What time works for you? And I was like, 10? So we met at 10. They had just put in a brand new Reuter instrument 3 years beforehand. So I basically got $1 million toy to sit down and play with. I auditioned for the position and won the position. And it was the first significant church position I had. And I learned quite a bit about How do you lead a congregation in singing when they don't want to go the same tempo as you on hymns? How do you navigate through when someone comes up and says, "Oh, I didn't like your prelude"? How do you be gracious still while also being firm and not letting, you're there to worship, but it's also a job. And I've learned at this church how to make that balance. And I had wonderful tutelage from both my pastors and from Tracy Rezegi as my music director. He then retired, and we hired Dr. Mariana Frye, who was at the University of Kansas. She is now the director of choral activities at the University of Wisconsin, and she is from Brazil. And so I got a whole new realm of perspective. She's also about 4'4". So she conducts like this the whole time because she is just such a short, tiny lady. She's very petite. But she's phenomenal and wonderful. She introduced a lot of Brazilian music to me, some composers to look up and things like that, which I would not have been familiar with. And then, of course, I am now here current as the director of music at Trinity. So this church on the left is the small little church. That's the North Sandy Presby that was, this big where I played at and piano when I first started. On the right is the Evangelical Memorial Church. The church is about 160 years old at this point. I believe it was founded in the 1860s. This is the church in Manhattan, and you can see the massive instrument. I mean, it's just massive. It's one of those, it's like here, when you pull on those brass reeds in the pedal, you feel them as well as hear them. It actually is a smaller instrument than the instrument here. It just looks bigger because it's self-contained. You can see everything, whereas most of our pipes are hidden up in the walls. So, and then that's the massive cornerstone from the original church. That church is quite wealthy. This was the church in the Presbyterian Church in Lawrence, Kansas. So you can see the console and the instrument. That's the front of the church, and that's actually my favorite thing in the church. That is a hand-woven tapestry for Pentecost and the tongues of fire and the flames of the Holy Spirit. And it sits right in the front of the church behind the communion table. It's probably about 10 foot by 8 foot wide. And every time the pastor is preaching, I would listen and then I would stop listening because I would just get so enveloped in the artwork. And there were on each side of it, one was plants and tree life and one was water and water life. And they were donated by a very, very famous artist out of Kansas City. And that is one of the centerpieces of that church. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about now this ACDA Eastern Division Conference I attended. The church sponsored me to go to this. They did not sponsor my student. We got a scholarship for him. And we went, and this would have been the second week of March. So we left Wednesday at 7. We carpooled with some students from Wyalusing, and we went to the Cheesecake Factory. If you've not been there and you like cheesecake, I highly recommend you go. And we were at the Rhode Island Convention Center. I will also send this PowerPoint to Peter so it can be, you can access it later if you'd like to click. These are hyperlinks. They work. I'm just not going to show you a picture of the Cheesecake Factory. So, but a couple of things about it. All of the concerts were given at Grace Episcopal Church in downtown Providence, Rhode Island. They have a music program headed by Vince Edward. It is a stunning space. Absolutely stunning. It is old enough that the pews were given by families. They were family pew style with the closing door, and you knew whose pew was who, whereas where that tradition comes from, because you bought the pew you sat in a lot of the times. Unfortunately, they do not have really any decent working instruments. The grand organ in the rear of the church is stunning to look at. I use the word dilapidated, and I truly mean that. It is truly falling apart, but they are in the middle of a brand new funding project that is going to be fixing all of these things. They have a chancel organ in the front of the church as well, and at one point it was a working pipe organ. In the past 20 years, someone had come in and put in a digital organ, still using the manuals of that instrument, but the church instruments are really, really outdated, but there is significant funding going on to make those things. And the goal is to fix them. They're going to renovate them and bring them back to their former glory. Once that is done, it will be the premier instrument in Providence. So, and I'm hoping that at some point I'll get a chance to actually go and play it and sing there and do some things. That evening we went to the Malted Barley. It was a really cool place. They specialized in pretzels. So like sandwich, pretzels, soups, all kinds of stuff. And then the concert that evening was really wonderful. We got to hear the Rhode Island Children's Chorus, the Boston's Children's Chorus, and then Coro Allegro. And then the nightcap that evening was with some of my colleagues, and we went to Murphy's Pub. So if you're interested in the program and things like that, again, you can click on these, and they will be available for you to links. On Thursday, then, I attended a couple different sessions. The World Music and Cultures and Español por favor. So that was all about Spanish music. I do not have a large awareness of Spanish music, and there is a ton of Spanish music that is accessible for church singing. And so he talked about some of the sacred pieces, some secular pieces, and my primary focus of this was bringing some new music, specifically sacred music, into my life and to introduce to the church. So I went to another session called Approaching Contemporary Korean Choral Repertoire and Pedagogical Considerations. So what that really means was, here are some accessible songs by Korean composers in the language, and here's a very brief introduction to how to read it. It was wonderful. I walked out of that and felt like I had the tools, or knew someone to contact with the tools to do Korean choral music. So, and it's not just arirang. There's a lot of Korean choral music. Everyone just knows arirang, right? That's the da 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 da. That's the only one. But there's tons of other great music in Korean history. Then I went to this really cool session. I'll never be able to sing any of this music. It was a collegiate music, and it was music from the Ring of Fire. So the whole, Japan and Polynesia just talked about it, and the notation, depending on where you were, is notation I've never seen before. There were languages that are truly only spoken on some of these very small islands. And the person who did this presentation, her doctorate was in music from the Ring of Fire, bringing an awareness to it. And it was really, really cool and interesting to hear it, and the language differences. And, one of the things about some of those languages in the Ring of Fire is they are pitched. So you have a pitched language, but you're also singing choral music, which is pitched. So some of the vocal lines actually followed the pitch pattern of the language, which we do that with Anglican chant. We follow, subtle spoken rhythmic things. We don't follow the pitch so much to speak, but it's one of those things where it's like, wow, this is brilliant. And I don't have any idea what they're doing, but this is really cool. And then the thing I enjoyed the most, I got to participate in what's called an immersion choir. So everyone comes and everyone joins in and sings. And Rollo Daleworth, who is the director of choral activities at Temple University, and probably in the top 4 leading voices on Black music in the United States, specifically spirituals and gospels, was there. And then Dr. Drummond, who is the leading voice on spirituals and gospel music in the world, was at the piano, led the whole thing. And it was one of those things like, I'll probably never get that Colvin experience again, especially as a white man. Like, there are just certain experiences I'm not going to have. And getting to work with those gentlemen and talk about what it's like to experience music culturally before you experience it academically. That was the whole point of that. And the cultural and religious parts that go with that, and how it is such a deep, immersed part of the church. And the academic part comes second. That's just, that's the bringing it to the masses, educating people on it, making it accessible. And so it was a fascinating work.
Andy, if I may, in some corners of choral singing, it's considered cultural appropriation anymore to sing spirituals if you're a white choir. Did they address that kind of
They
thing?
did. And that's actually something I feel very strongly about too. If you don't sing the music dies. And the whole point of a lot of the point of the bringing awareness to Black composers is because their music never even got the chance to live because of cultural reasons. And it's one of those things where if you're going to do a spiritual or gospel piece, it's no different than singing a Zambian folk song with tribal drumming. You have to do your research. You have to present it in a non-affrontive way. So there is nothing wrong with singing spirituals. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you probably should do your research on why it's a spiritual. What is the message behind it? Why was it necessary? A lot of the time, spirituals and gospel music have the double entendre. So follow the drinking gourd, well known, is talking about some biblical things in church, but it also literally means follow this constellation of the drinking gourd to get to the north, escape slavery, and escape this enslaved lives. And there's a gentleman who's actually now at North Texas. His name is Marcus Garrett. He is probably the younger generation's leading voice in this area. And he actually just released it's called Non-Idiomatic Choral Music by Black Composers. So it's music by Black composers that just doesn't focus on spirituals and gospels. Because that's the other thing. It can't just become this fascination that only Black people sing gospels and only white people sing this and only Indian people sing this and only Russian Orthodox sing. If that happens, then music no longer is a universal language and it becomes like everything else. So for me, if you've done the historical research, you've done the cultural research, and you're presenting it as, here we go, this is what it is, I think that's fine. A lot of them talked about, Dr. Dumman specifically talked about, not every spiritual you don't have to end a concert with spiritual. It should not be the closer. Now, sometimes they are. Sometimes they're barn burners that are really exciting. But a lot of the times, American, Western, even Western Europe choirs, we do them at the end because it's kind of the showpiece. And I think that's part of the conversation is don't make it a showpiece, just make it part of the repertoire. It shouldn't be, you should sing Moses Hogan as much as you sing Brahms, as much as you sing Buxtehude, as much as you look, even like going clear back to Samuel Scheidt or into Renaissance music. It really should try to get a good breadth of that. So, and that was a large point of the conversation. And the choral world is very aware of this. And it's something that we just continue to work on. And that's ACDA, the American Choral Directors Association, is actually one of their missions and documented points is they want to be better and they want to learn how to be better. So that's a great question, Greg. Thank you. So I got to hear from Pennsylvania, Central Bucks East High School program. It was a wonderful high school concert. Roxbury High School program is a middle school program. And then Lebanon Valley Bible College. And then we actually got to hear one of the premier concerts of Lyra. So Voces 8, if you're music people, you have probably heard Voces 8 before. They are world-renowned vocalists. They're an a cappella ensemble. I think there's 8 of them, maybe 9. And it's mixed voices, SATB. And then Lyra is an all-treble ensemble. So the sopranos down to contraltos. And I will tell you, the bass voice of Lyra, she can sing lower than most of the tenors in our church choir. I mean, she's phonated a low B flat, and I was like in my seat and was like, is there a man like hiding in a corner somewhere? Like that, I have never heard that. It was really quite incredible. So Lyra, if you enjoy treble voices and specifically a large Renaissance the whole way up until now, they are phenomenal, and I highly recommend seeing them in concert. It's one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. It was truly amazing. And Lyra kind of to me was a step above Voces 8. Voces 8 was amazing. And then Lyra came out and sang a song, and I was just like, well, I didn't think it would get much better, but clearly just did. And Voces 8 shouldn't come back out. They were phenomenal. Lyra just took that one step, and it was like, I mean, I'm not disappointed it's Voces 8, but wow, that was phenomenal. And then I had I'm a foodie, so I love food. So that breakfast, I had a stuffed croissant. I didn't even know what that was, but it was like brie and raspberry jam with turkey. And it was like Thanksgiving meal wrapped in a little bun. It was perfect. But then I had this amazing hot honey fried chicken sandwich that was this big and this wide. And I ate it with a fork, and I wasn't even trying to eat it like a sandwich. And then I had probably the second best meal of my life. We went to a Korean wok pot. And they literally bring a pot full of all the food. It's not cooked yet. And they put it on your table on the hot plate, and they cook it in front of you. And then at the end, you add in all kinds of stuff. Something that blew my mind about that meal, adding sliced Kraft American cheese to ramen noodles. Mind blowing. Because I was like, this is Kraft and this is ramen. No, this doesn't work. And I looked up at the Damien who I was eating with, and I was just like, he's like, this is the best thing I've ever eaten. I was like, me too. And we didn't even talk. We just ate for 10 minutes. It was incredible. I also discovered a new sake. I like sake. I don't drink it very often, but when I'm in place that is a Korean restaurant or Japanese restaurant, I will do it. And they had one, it's it's cold and it's called like snow globe sake or something. And it kind of has, it's very viscous, but it was quite good. So, and then the next day I went to some more sessions. This was probably the most educational session I went to. It was entering uncharted territory, remapping our understanding of the female voice. We've talked about male voices. We've talked about male voices for 1400 years, right? There's a book on male singing anatomy from like the 8th century. Do you know when they did one for women? The 1950s. So we've talked about female voices for about 70 years. We've talked about men's voices for 1400 years. So we know a lot about that. We don't know a lot about the female voice. And this woman who was talking, she lives with an autoimmune disorder. I don't know if it's Crohn's. I don't know what she lives with, but it causes significant gastric distress. It causes significant swelling and bloating of the muscles. So she got into this presentation and she's like, so if that's affecting that, what do you think's happening to your vocal cords? And I was just like light bulbs are going off. It was like when you win the jackpot, like they just kept going and going. And the further we got into the conversation, the further the whole room just, I mean, people's jaws were on the floor because we don't know. It is such an area we don't talk about. So the first thing I did when I went back to my junior high on that Monday to my 7th and 8th grade choir, we talked about the effects of menstruation on the female voice. You should have seen my 7th and 8th grade voice. And I said at the very beginning, I said, to be clear, I'm not giving you a health lesson. I'm not the health teacher. We are talking specifically about vocal cords and swelling. That's all we're talking about. I said, I'm going to use the word menstruation because that's where it comes from. And I said, and I need you all not to just be grossed out by this. I said, I know you all know what it is. You might not understand it, and that's okay. I don't understand it either. I'm not a female. But I do understand these 7 things about it, and talked about how the voice, and I did it with my high school group. And it was one of those things. I never thought I'd have that conversation because I never knew I was missing all of that information. And it's one of those areas I've reached out to her and I was like, I hope you apply to do this session everywhere, because this is a glaringly large area of ignorance in music education, specifically vocal education. Because I get on my sopranos in 7th grade about not singing loud enough. Well, what I don't realize and didn't realize is that's all they got. They literally can't do anything else. And they might not even have hit the menstruation part of puberty, but puberty is still affecting that voice. And I know all about the male voice. I know mid voice 2A, 2B, settling baritone, new baritone, settled baritone. Like those are the 7 developments of boys. Boys' voice start changing at 5. That's just up here. I know that. If you're like, well, when do girls start changing? I would probably be, it's like balderdash. I'm very good at not knowing it, but convincing you I do. And I would have probably 5 or 6. Right. And so it's one of those areas that was a phenomenal session. And then we had a second emergent choir in the same, still looking at those Black spirituals and gospel music. And then at that point, I had a large time to go around and look at music exhibits. And the beautiful thing about music exhibits at festivals is they'll sell you pieces of music for $1, where normally they're $4 or $5. So I just go, I don't even look. I just shove them in the basket. I'll pay $1 for a piece of music I'm never going to look at again, even if it's bad. And then I get home, and in the summers, I'll spend about 2 weeks just sitting at my piano, going through music and picking stuff for school, picking stuff for here, that kind of things. I had a very wonderful crab cake, fried green tomato, eggs Benedict, potatoes, and some mimosa. And then I had a caprese salad with clam and caramelized onion pizza. I ate really well. And then Saturday, unfortunately, couldn't attend any sessions in the morning, but Taryn and I checked out of our hotel rooms. He was up somewhere, and I was in like a whole different tower. But we met at the mall, and then we went to the concert. Dr. Felissa Barber, who is one of the professors of choral studies at Yale, was his clinician, and Zenaida Robles, who is one of the up-and-coming female composers based out of California. They actually premiered a piece by Felissa and Zenaida. And Zenaida came, and it was really cool. And Taryn said to me after that event, this is the best thing I've ever been to. And that was a really cool moment for me, because I think sometimes he takes a lot for granted because he is pretty talented. And then he got there and was like, oh, there's a lot of me. Okay. And that was, but he said getting to do a world premiere was definitely like the first time he's done that. And I got to listen to it. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. And if you've been to Providence, if you've not been and you are ever going to go, the Vets Auditorium is a beautiful, beautiful space. It was built to honor our veterans, I believe, of World War II. It's an old facility, but it is quite stunning. And the reason I put all that in there is because the church supported me to go to that. And I came back with a couple different ideas. I found a new requiem that I'm considering doing. There was a lot of things there and a lot of networking that happened. And I'm hoping if, eventually we're going to take the Trinity music program on tour. And if we ever get up into the Northeast, I'd actually like to go to this Episcopal church, but I'm going to wait till the organ's done because I want to play it. So I know I've just talked for like 45 minutes. So here's kind of the upcoming things that I am doing with you all. And today at 4 p.m. there is Evensong. It's my first time doing an Evensong. I learned a lot about what Evensong is and how to do it. And so it'll be a choral feature. Greg is going to be our officiant. So there'll be some plain song chanting and things like that. We're going to feature 2 choral pieces, O Nata Lux, which talks about the light perpetual, which for Pentecost. And then the old classic, if you've ever seen, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Down the River to Pray. And I also wrote my Trinity Times article for May on those 2 pieces. So if you didn't get a chance to read that, you could do that. I failed to mention June 2nd. That's going to be our last choir meeting for this year. And we're going to sing some of the choir's favorite pieces from this past year. So you might hear some repeats. In September, we are going to have our kind of like welcome back choir Sunday. Choir will start before September 22nd, but that'll be a feature. We'll sing some different things and some features with that. Then in November 3rd, that is the Sunday after All Saints Day, we're going to be doing a requiem. I've narrowed it down to 4. I started with like 15. I keep whittling it down and whittling it down. And then, of course, last year, Benjamin Britten's Ceremony of Carols were scheduled, I know, at the beginning of the year, but then with Tim's retirement and interim and then everything that got moved. So I just moved it to this year. And we're going to be doing Benjamin Britten's Ceremony of Carols pending the harpist saying they're available. I have some emails out. You cannot do this piece without a harpist, but it's also not something that every harpist can play. It is a very, very challenging piece. So I have some of that out. And then at some point before the new year, I am planning to do an organ recital here featuring the music of Daniel E. Gothrop. I played some of his stuff right when I first came here as the interim director. I played quite a bit of his stuff, but he is a well-known living organ composer and choral composer. His most famous choral piece is Sing Me to Heaven, which if you're a choral person, maybe are familiar with that. But he is also very, very well known in the organ world. And if you'd like to listen to his music, my organ professor from Kansas State University actually did, I believe he has recorded all of his works. And that was part of his doctoral dissertation. So that's enough about me. Do you have questions or anything you would like to know?
When do you sleep?
Go ahead.
When Randy mentioned June 2nd, the American Guild of Organists Binghamton chapter has its yearly members recital on which Randy says he's too busy to play, but we're hoping he will come to listen. United Presbyterian Church, 4:00 in the afternoon, and we're going in different directions also. One of our people here, Carol, are you here somewhere? Carol Bartlett is playing piano pieces. There she is in the back. We have a shakuhachi Japanese flute that is playing. We have Phil Westcott is playing saxophone. We have 9 of our members playing the United Presbyterian Church, free and open to the public. And like I say, there are posters that I just posted. 4:00, June 2nd, so you can really immerse yourself.
Yeah.
Randy, what are your thoughts about our Casavant organ and how it compares to other organs you've played, especially in Kansas City, which you talked about a great deal?
I don't honestly know enough to really be able to answer that. I've only played two of the instruments in Kansas City. I've got to hear a lot of them, but I've never really played them. And our organ is kind of a hybrid. It's not really a Cassavant anymore. It's a Cassavant / Smith and Gilbert. And Tim is very with what he has done to this. He has made the instrument have a lot more color choices. Adding the nave division, I personally think helps support congregational singing more, so you can hear sound coming at you versus sometimes getting trapped in the chancel, especially on some of the softer kind of things. And so I'm not sure I answered your question very well, but it's definitely the second largest instrument I've ever played. And it has a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of wonderful things with it. And I'm very excited to get to know the instrument more. I feel like it's one of those kind of things, it's a relationship, but the more you study it, the more you actually learn about it. And, a year is coming up on Father's Day weekend for me. And I feel like I've scraped the surface. I've got about 2 feet into the well of what that organ is. And every couple weeks I go, oh, that doesn't do what I thought it would. And sometimes from like when I practiced at 6:30 this morning to when I played the prelude, types completely changed their intonation, and things that were in tune are out of tune, or vice versa. Things that were out of tune came into tune. There was a moment during the prelude I was like, oh, that trumpet went out on the F. Okay. But it was one of those things. It was too late for me to do anything about it, so I just played. But that was not how it sounded at 6:45 when I first was doing that this morning. So, but yeah, it's one of those things where I really am getting to know this instrument, and the more time I spend and become more involved with the AGO, I'm hoping to get to know more of the instruments in the area as well. Yeah.
When do you sleep and what do you do for relaxation, or don't you?
So I drove to Harrisburg 3 times this week. Tuesday went to Gettysburg. Friday went to Baltimore. Yesterday went to Lancaster. Tomorrow I'm going to Indiana, PA, not the state.
Is the sleep part of the relaxation?
I look at it like this. God has given me a great life. I'm 35. I'm very fortunate. I don't have anything that ties me down except my 2 cats, and they're cats. They're fine. So I just do as much as I can. And in the summer, I take my summers off and I do my rest and relaxation, and I travel and I go camping. But I'm a large bibliophile. I love reading. I have my own personal library of about 560 books. And I love that. So I will read a lot. I do book on tape. And now that I've found book on tape, I actually relax when I'm driving because I can kind of immerse myself in that world. I also really like to cook. I've cooked, I think, twice since January because I don't really have time to cook, but I love to cook, and I find it to be very relaxing and, for me, very therapeutic, because there is nothing that gets the rage out like making chicken cutlets with that meat hammer. It feels much better at the end of it. But yeah, and I do, if I can, if I'm done with school and I get home like 5 after some private lessons, if I don't have anything to do, I like turn off the lights and sit with the cat and watch TV for like an hour. Sometimes I just sit in the dark because it's just quiet and no one's talking, and it's just like peace. But I also love to sleep. I'm just a sleeper. So if you ever come in if I'm here and you knock on my office door and I'm not answering, I'm probably napping. But I do love to sleep, and that is a way I relax. But yes, I do stay active, and until God takes that ability from me, I'm not planning to stop. So, yes.
I just want to say that, when a congregation gets a new organist, it's quite a shock. When I joined this church as an adult, with an organist who'd been a while, he was here for a long time and, unfortunately died. And then Tim came in, and like the whole tempo, Tim played a lot faster, or maybe just picked songs that were faster.
Sure.
Yes, you're trying to like acclimate to this change and everything. And then you came in and you slowed it down a little bit from my perspective from Tim. Anyway, I'm thrilled you're here.
Thank you.
I love what's going on.
Thank you.
And I hope you feel comfortable with us.
Oh, I do. I definitely. One thing you will notice about me, and I meant to say this earlier. So when I started my organ lessons, I asked specifically, I said, I am not here to be the next person who plays all of Bach's selected works. I'm not here to be the Duraflay person who, plays that piece that has the running triplets for 78 measures and it never stops. I'm not that organist. That's not who I am. I am not going to sit down and practice Buxtehude until my fingers bleed. That's not who I am. I have an appreciation for that. I love learning it. I love learning Bach. I love learning Franck. I mean, I really do. But I also really like living composers. And that's a big area of my life. That's a personal thing for me. So you might be a little bit like, well, he doesn't really play a lot of Buxtehude or Bach, any of those classics. And you're correct. I don't. And if that's something that you really want, I will introduce you to this thing called the internet, and you can virtually have those experiences. Now, that's not saying I'm never going to be playing those kind of things, but that was not my training. My training specifically was in church music. Not to be the world's best organist, not to be that. So I truly am a vocalist and pianist first. Organist very close second to that. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to do them. But you'll notice, like Easter this year was 2 living new composers. I play a lot of Paul Fay because Paul Fay is, he's like 30 and alive, and I actually really like his stuff for my aural palette as well. I like Gordon Young, and Gordon Young was the Paul Fay of the 50s, right? Like he was that. And that's not saying I'm not going to play your Brahms and Buxtehude and some of those classics, but that is not the kind of organist I am, and I've not really been trained in that. So for me to learn a Bach chorale or a Buxtehude it takes 8 to 10, 20 times as long for me to do that. And unless it's summertime, I don't always have time to practice for like 8 hours on a piece. Summer I will, and I'm actually planning to learn quite a new music this summer. I'm focusing specifically in French music because I don't play a lot of French music. So I've got some pieces. Jean brought me some pieces to look at and some things like that I'm going to hopefully be getting under my fingers. And I do have some Bach pieces I would like to learn this summer. I have a list. So.
And he has a recital on July 29th in Troy, Pennsylvania.
July 21st.
29th is what.
The 29th is a Tuesday, so it's definitely not then. It's the 21st.
Wants to ride. He will be sharing a recital with Rob Oldroyd in Frye Presbyterian.
And we're doing all French music. Yeah, it's going to be all French. Yes.
Among living composers, are you familiar with, or how do you rank Dan Locklear?
So I only know Dan's choral works. I have not done a lot of his specific organ solos or a large of his, but yes, I know he was at First Pres for a long time, and that's that was the most exciting thing about Binghamton for me was the rich choral and organ history with having Dan Locklear and Cyril Wright and Peter Brown, and these are people who are known. They are known. They're not just little names we know. They are internationally renowned. Yes.
Yeah, I have a different question really, and it's about hymns.
Yes.
Okay, now, we all have our favorite hymns. And for example, on All Saints, I really love to sing, the funny little hymn that goes, they're all saints of God. I want to be one too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So I was wondering whether you would consider asking for suggestions on hymns relating, and for you to make it easier, relating to which particular parts of the church calendar they would fit in.
Oh, absolutely.
And then we would all get to hear, hopefully, our favorite hymns at least once a year.
Well,
the hymn book is so vast.
I don't know if you'll get it once a year because there's 750 hymns in our hymnal, and there's only 360. True. No, that's a very valid point.
There are hymns that we hardly ever sing, and which some people might really like.
Yeah.
Really like that would be worth resuscitating.
Yes. And if you haven't figured it out, I am not Episcopal. I mean, I am now, but I don't know a lot of the Anglican hymns. So I just kind of picked the melodies that I think sound pretty. Sometimes I know them. Like the middle hymn today, I didn't know. That was new to me. And I was like, oh, I really like this melody and text. So I just pick it. So if you have recommendations or certain hymns you would like to hear done, absolutely. That goes the same for choral anthems. I promise you I will look at it, consider it. I don't promise you I'll program it. But I do promise you a look and consider it, and especially if it's like for Trinity Sunday or Pentecost, like those kind of things, any kind of specialized, especially. But yes, I only know what I know, which is very, very minimal. So please, if you have suggestions, or I would love to hear this piece or this or that or whatever. So yeah, that was great. And that date for their sale is the 28th, everyone,
Yep.
not the 21st. That's my
Yeah,
mistake.
just looked
So,
28th, Sunday.
anything else? Anyone else? Any burning questions from the folks who are online? I see some of you there.
I do have one other comment. The hymn, I think it was 229 that we sang today, was written by Emily Suter.
Yeah.
What was the
Press-
organist at U Press where our recital is going to be. So we have a lot of people. Also, David Hurd, of which we've used so many of the chanting. I went to college with him. He was in my class at Oberlin. In fact, studied at the same teacher. There are multiple connections here. This is very rich.
If this we are, for somebody like me coming here from heaven knows where, I've been very, very impressed on in general, the music tradition in the Triple Cities, between having the opera and having very wonderful church music. I think we are incredibly blessed with that. More than anything I've ever seen anywhere else.
I second that.
Well, please feel free to approach me. I can have conversations. Even if you don't think I'm going to like what you have to say, come talk to me. I teach middle school and high school for a living. I guarantee you're not going to shock me. But thank you, folks. Thanks for your support.